Hey guys, what's going on? Again, it's me, Jay. This is the 25th edition of my WrestleMania review series, my Road to WrestleMania, where I review each and every WrestleMania leading up to WrestleMania 41 on April the 20th. And right now we're in WrestleMania 25, the 25th anniversary of WrestleMania that took place on April the 5th, 2009. And this is a landmark WrestleMania in the sense that this is the beginning of the PG era. WWE was starting to move away from the edgier content that it typified the company's product from 1997 to 2009. Both the ruthless aggression era as well as the attitude era have been typified by an increase in sex, an increase in violence. But now, because of the deaths of, particularly the death of Chris Benoit, the Chris Benoit tragedy, and the bad publicity that the company got, they were moving in another direction. So that actually makes WrestleMania 24, the last one we reviewed, the last pay per view, or the last WrestleMania of the attitude. I mean, of the non PG era, the TV 14 era. And also because Linda McMahon, the following year in 2010, would start her political career running for the Senate in Connecticut. And Vince was entirely behind that. Putting his money and his resources behind that, but he had to steer the company in that direction. So for that, they continued to have John Cena as the face of the company, but John Cena's character had to change. Rather than the FU, which his move was called, he changed it to the attitude adjustment. Rather than the STFU, he changed it to the uh, just the STF, right? So, and no more rapping gimmick. He would keep the jorts and the bright colors, but he had tried to tone it down a couple of years before this too. I think after the Marine came out, that's when his persona started to really change. And also, this is the first time that the ECW, ironically enough, it's the first PG WrestleMania, but it's the first time that ECW is included as one of the brands in in the pay per view. Usually, it's just SmackDown and Raw, and ECW was TV 14. It was even more than TV 14, I think. You know what I mean? It typified mature wrestling television in the 90s at least. But WWE was trying to make ECW in their own image. We saw that last time when Kane became the ECW champion, or even the year before with Vince McMahon and Bobby Lashley becoming the ECW champion. Uh, they didn't try to recreate the old ECW, sadly, and that's why Paul Heyman left. He got fed up with this shit, and he was like, you're not going to take my company that was my legacy and shit on it." So he just left the company for a while, stayed out of the wrestling business. Anyway, let's just jump into it. This took place at Reliance Stadium in Houston, Texas. On the pre-show, you had the Colognes, Carlito and Primo, uh, the WWE Tag Team Champions taking on John Morrison and The Miz, and they defeat them for the World Tag Team Championships. Even though they had the brand extension still, they're kind of trying to unify certain titles, and the tag team titles were one of them. And this wasn't a great era for tag team wrestling. You know, uh, Vince had taken the emphasis off tag team wrestling. Tag team wrestling really didn't bounce back, in my opinion, until we got those great Usos and New Day feuds in the 2010s. Finally, the second match is the Money in the Bank match. CM Punk wins this one. This is his second Money in the Bank. This one I kind of knew he was gonna win. It wasn't like the year before where It was it was it came to a shock to many people. He was already established. He had already won the championship, so good for him. And he would start his ascension that would eventually lead him to dominance in the 2 more years, which we will talk about when we get there. Um, the third match is the Miss WrestleMania Battle Royal. Now, this was retarded. Excuse me, this was, not retarded. I don't mean to use the R word. Don't want to get banned off YouTube, but this was dumb. I mean, this was really dumb. You had all these divas from the past come back, right? Gail Kim, a bunch of them. And number one, they didn't introduce them individually, which I guess they don't really do in any battle royal, but at least let them be known who they are. You know what I mean? Even now, many people can't even remember who was in the freaking match because Kid Rock was singing. Kid Rock, they decided that it was a good idea to have Kid Rock have an impromptu concert in the middle of a WrestleMania. I mean, who comes up with it? Exactly, David. David is right. The match was stupid. Just like I said, who comes up with this shit? Kid Rock. He's way past relevancy. The last time Kid Rock was relevant in popular music, it was 1998. And he's there singing, and all the divas are coming out, not even introducing their names. And you know what? Guess who wins? A guy. Santino Morello won the match. Santina Santino Morello dressed as Santina Morella. Now this would in 2025 this would be a relevant topic because now we're actually talking about in all seriousness men in guys sports. You know, Trump should have been. Hey, Trump took over Raw this same year. He should have been on this. You know what I mean? A guy winning a women's battle royal, just crazy. He won by last eliminating Beth Phoenix. David is absolutely right. Thank God. You know, I don't know what they were thinking, putting Santino Morella over in this match. The next match is Chris Jericho going against the Legends. Now, the promos to this match were very good. At this time, in 2008, there was a movie released, and it was a great movie. It was starred Mickey Rourke, right? Making his comeback after leaving acting and going into boxing and then basically going broke. He was making his comeback with the movie The Wrestler, about an ex-wrestler from the 1980s named Randy the Ram Robinson, who is struggling with his health, struggling with his finances, and basically living the old washed up wrestler life that is so typical of many in the professional wrestling industry. We can name them on our hands: Jake Roberts, Scott Hall, uh, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, anybody who Buff Bagwell, anybody who DDP has helped through DDP yoga. This was basically their life, this movie. And it finally got people talking about the trials and tribulations that wrestlers go through. And it was a huge hit. And it was nominated for an Oscar. So initially, um, Vince McMahon didn't like the movie because he felt like it exposed too much of the wrestling business. There's scenes in it like the match with Necro Butcher where Randy the Ram is cutting himself, and it's basically letting people know the the inside, letting the general public know the inside of the wrestling business, in addition to letting people know what wrestlers go through. So Vince didn't like it. He felt it exposed the business too much, and he didn't want to have anything to do with it. But when it was nominated, after it got nominated for an Oscar, he's like, "Hey, let's have Mickey Rourke, come to WrestleMania and do something with Chris Jericho." But Mickey Rourke's people advised him not to do so because a couple of years before this, Eddie Murphy had been nominated for an Oscar for his performance in Dreamgirls. And after he did that, he did a comedy movie called Norbit. And the Academy felt insulted. They felt he didn't take it serious enough. He wasn't dignified enough. So if they did that to Eddie Murphy, imagine what they would do to Mickey Rourke if he was nominated for the Oscar and then he appeared at WrestleMania. The snobs in Hollywood feel like, even though the movie's about wrestling, they feel like him actually appearing in an actual wrestling event would be beneath him. So him and Chris Jericho, they have this exchange on Larry King, a heated exchange, and Mickey Rourke is all in. But then when his people tell him this, he's like, okay, then I can't do it. So they have to pivot, and they begin to have Chris Jericho comparing these older legends like Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, and Roddy Piper to the character and the wrestler, Mickey Rourke's character, Randy the Ram. He's telling them that they're washed up, that they're past their prime, that they should just give it up. Ironically, this is Chris Jericho. And if you've seen Chris Jericho lately in 2025, he is basically the same kind of legend that he made fun of. He is basically that person now. But the promos to this were very, very good. The promo that Roddy Piper cut when he talked about how people come up to him and say, "Oh, I remember when you slapped Mr. T. Or I remember when you shaved Adrian Adonis's head." He talks about when he came out at the Royal Rumble in 2008, him and Jimmy Snuka. It felt like he was back in the first WrestleMania. And he says, "Old school's cool." The promo from Roddy Piper was really good. The promo from not Jimmy Superfly Snuka, from Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was really good. Now, again, there were rumors that Hulk Hogan was considering appearing and doing this match with Jericho to represent the legends, but that fell through because of Hogan's back surgery. So, they got these three. And all three had appeared at the first WrestleMania. And we thought this was just going to be a throwaway match. And Snuka got in there. He looked like a zombie. Piper got in there. He looked terrible. And they were eliminated. But then, to our shock and amazement, for the first time since 1994, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat stepped into a wrestling ring, and him and Chris Jericho put on a phenomenal performance. And people were on their feet chanting, "Ricky, you still got it." To our shock and amazement, I mean, everybody, that was the big takeaway from this angle, that Ricky Steamboat, after all these years, could still get in there and go. And Chris Jericho still won, but it was a shock to us all, and it resulted in Steamboat and him wrestling the next month in a rematch. And eventually Steamer got injured, but man, for that one night it shocked us. And then Mickey Rourke did end up getting involved a little bit. He didn't wrestle a match, but he did end up being there and getting involved. And he punched Chris Jericho at the end of the match. So the next match is Matt Hardy versus Jeff Hardy. The Hardys against each other. Yeah. David says Trish Stratus should have kicked Santino Morella's ass for winning the Battle Royal. Oh man, yeah, that would have been funny. The Hardy Boys match was not good. You know what I mean? Uh, it, Jeff Hardy was on top of the world at this time. Jeff Hardy was the biggest star in professional in WWE next to John Cena. And I think it would have been better to go with John Cena versus Jeff Hardy as a big match than this. This was terrible. But Jeff Hardy would soon after this match, Jeff Hardy would leave the company. Uh, the next match was for the Intercontinental Championship. It was pretty weird. JBL was on his way out actually. Um, he announced that this would be his retirement. Months previous to this, he had done an angle with Shawn Michaels that Shawn Michaels was broke. Shawn Michaels was, had to do menial jobs from like wash dishes and shit. And like we're like, how is Shawn Michaels broke and he's been in WWE this whole time since '02? You know, it, and they tried to tie the recession into it, like, oh, Shawn Michaels made some bad stock decisions and some bad real estate decisions, and and he lost. And he lost all his money, so he had to work for JBL. Like, yo, the angle was just stupid. Luckily, they scrapped it, and he won his chance to face the Undertaker by defeating Vladimir Kozlov. You know? So what's JBL doing? He comes to the ring just talking shit. Rey Mysterio challenged him. Rey Mysterio beats him, and this is the end of the road for JBL as he retires after this. And next we have the Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels match. This match was incredible, man. This is the greatest match in the history of professional wrestling, in my opinion. Um, the one spot they do where like Undertaker dives into the cameraman that was played by Jimmy Snuka's son, man, that shit blew me away. And then so many, so many tombstones, and Shawn Michaels would not stay down. And at the beginning, where they're like, the whole theme of it was like Shawn Michaels is a Christian, so he's portraying a Christian character, and the Undertaker is a demonic force, and Shawn Michaels coming out in all white, and Undertaker coming out in all black. It was, and I loved it, man. It was something I'll never forget. I was on the edge of my seat watching this. I'm like, why couldn't they have a match like this when I was when I was, one of, why couldn't they have WrestleMania 25 in New York? Like, I was so jealous of my friend that lived in Texas that got to go see it live, man. I wish I was there for Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, man. Fucking greatest match ever. Man, he can't. It was so good. I never wanted the shit to end. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, the Undertaker streak's still intact. The Undertaker beat Shawn Michaels. And then we get to John Cena taking on Edge and Big Show. Now, this is another example, like WrestleMania 22, I said, and like WrestleMania 24, where you didn't need a triple threat match. You didn't really need a triple threat match. Like, because they had that one good triple threat match at WrestleMania 20, they felt like they had to keep going back to the well. And in this time, they went back to the well one too many times, in my opinion, because John Cena and Edge had so many good matches throughout the whole of '06. John Cena and Edge had classic matches. Why did not just have John Cena versus Edge? You know what I mean? Why throw the Big Show in there? Didn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Edge already had the storyline where he was dating Vicky Guerrero, right? Vicky Guerrero on SmackDown, she had tons of heat. Excuse me, excuse me. You know what I mean? Like you could have just had Cena and Edge. It's just like last year, you could have had Cena and Orton. You know, these were guys that Edge worked pretty well. I mean, John Cena worked pretty well with. I mean, look, Edge attacked Cena's father, just like Randy Orton attacked Cena's father. So why throw the Big Show in there? It didn't make sense. You know what I mean? It felt like the Big Show just wanted to get a payday, and and but they were unsure with this one because I heard several rumors of different events. They were talking about different matches for Cena. They were talking about Hulk Hogan coming back again, you know, to wrestle Cena. That was in the rumor mill. Stone Cold Steve Austin because he was getting inducted in the Hall of Fame this year. They were talking about throwing that around for Cena. So they kept changing the main event, and when it finally got to this, uh, it it was underwhelming. The only good part of it was when Cena hoisted both men on his shoulders. You know what I mean? And plus, the crowd was so exhausted for Shawn Michaels and Undertaker that they didn't want to see any other match. You know what I mean? They didn't want to see uh, John Cena and Edge and Big Show, and they didn't want to definitely see the main event of Randy Orton versus Triple H. Definitely not. But one good thing about yeah, David, you're right. One good thing, the only good thing about John Cena's performance this night, but I don't say the double, the double attitude adjustments with is the is the is the clones, the entrance, is the John Cena clones, the little John Cenas. It reminded me of Eminem's performance one year at the VMAs when he did "Will the Real Slim Shady Please Come Up, Please Stand Up," and there was a bunch of other Eminems. Well, this was what John Cena did, and that was cool. That was one of the greatest entrances of all time. But David is absolutely right. Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, one that should have main evented because next match, Triple H versus Randy Orton, with Triple H defending the championship against Randy Orton, totally underwhelming. They make the match no disqualification for no reason. I mean, they put the stipulation that if Triple H get disqualified, he'll lose the title. But from what? They didn't use anything illegal. Like, why have this stipulation? You know, it was just a fucking normal match. And what's crazy about it is the build up to this match was epic. The build up to this match was uh, Triple H invading Randy Orton's home, Randy Orton beating up Vince McMahon. Yeah, exactly. um, David says Triple H versus Orton was horrible. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Boy. Uh, Randy Orton kissing Stephanie McMahon and then finally acknowledging that Stephanie and Triple H are still married. But the payoff was totally shit. Like nobody cared. Everybody was completely drained from The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. And then you give us this. Triple H, it's the second time Triple H did this. He did this at WrestleMania 18 too. We talked about it. His match with Jericho. He just had to go on last during this era. He couldn't he couldn't let somebody else shine, and he only ruined himself. This era was filled with terrible Triple H main events, like terrible Triple H main events, horrible Triple H main events. from like the time he became a main eventer until I say, and this is one of them, until about he retired. You know what I mean? Like Triple H was a boring wrestler as a main eventer. I'm sorry. You know, unless he was wrestling The Undertaker. When he was wrestling The Undertaker, maybe he should have went on last. Not in 28 though, because that's Rock and Cena. Nothing's gonna beat that. But man, this was the biggest letdown. Overall, it was a great WrestleMania, but the last match was, and then he wins, and then Triple H wins. Like Orton has this amazing year. Orton had a new song. He had a new persona. He's with Legacy. He's coming into his own finally as a main eventer. Give him the rub. He won the Royal Rumble. Give him the rub. Have him win the championship. You're gonna drop it to him anyway in a couple months. But no, Triple H just had to win. He just had to go over. It was an icing on the cake icing on a shit cake for the main event for this WrestleMania. Overall, everything was good except for Kid Rock's performance, the women's battle royal, and Triple H winning. You know, and no need for a triple threat match really with Cena. You know, and now we move on to WrestleMania 26 in Phoenix, Arizona. Now WWE learns their lesson. They say, "Oh, nothing could top Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels." So when they do it again the following year, it does main event. Uh, no, I mean, yeah, it was. Uh, David says Randy Orton as a heel was stupid, was horrible, and it was stupid. I agree though, but I'm saying he had the momentum in his corner though. You know what I mean? He was doing all kinds of crazy stuff. It made more sense for him to go over than Triple H. You know what I mean? WWE, in my opinion, David, we can agree to disagree. WWE learns their lesson though the next year in Phoenix because uh, Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker Part 2 does go on last, you know, next year. And there's some pretty shit stuff in this the next review, WrestleMania 26, that we'll talk about. That was a huge letdown to me. This guy was finally coming back, and that guy's Bret the Hitman Hart. Uh, you know, we'll talk about it in the next review, and some retribution for Bret, and you know, it was a letdown. Also, we'll get introduced to Sheamus, who wrestles Triple H next year. Kane is getting his mask back, and Edge is returning from injury next year, so and winning the Royal Rumble. And John Cena versus Batista. And it's Batista's last WrestleMania for 4 years. So join me in the next one. Thank you, David, for contributing. David's absolutely right. Heel Orton's back to being a babyface the following year because many fans didn't like heel Orton. You know, it didn't really go well with the people. You know, he did some dastardly shit, but people just wanted to cheer him, I guess. Join me in the next one, WrestleMania 26. Thank you, David, for contributing. Love you guys. Peace.